Hello, and welcome back. Another episode. As promised, we try to deliver a bit faster this time. And yes, what we're going to be talking about today, I guess it's going to be some Q4 reflections and some other things that Robin's going to be telling us about.
That's right.
Anything that you'd
No.
like to share immediately?
Not really. I have nothing ultra urgent, Markus. Just, good to be back on GIST. I think it's good that we, step up the cadence a little bit more often. But the trade-off is then it will be shorter. So in this case, we will an update from Markus and reflections on the report that we sent on the Q4 report, Boksluss report for last year in Swedish. A little bit on what I wrote about there. And then I want to also share a little bit. I was at a virtual meeting most of last week. I was with CEO, vendors, interested people to give a little bit feedback on what happened there, what was my impression, and that'll be it. And then, once we're done GIST 9, then knowing Markus, we'll start planning GIST 10 immediately after today.
Yes, of course. Shall we then start off looking at the numbers? It seems like the burn rate has gone down even further, Robin. How are you managing on this?
Well, there are quite a lot of things that we had, a lot of hangovers that we hangover, if I can put that word in for the end of last year in the quarter report that we get able to get rid of. But the burn rate is what it is. We are in sort of combat mode for particular to getting as far as we can with our current war chest after the directed share emission and the T07 last year, which we reported on. So all good there. And I know, I try to be as economical, as reasonable as we can, but there are some fixed costs at Gabater as a traded company that we just have to have and can't change them. But I'm good with that burn rate. I should get, a little reflection on that when I talk to people in the investment and financials. And then I always say, good. The conversation is always the same. It starts like this: your market cap is very low, but your burn rate is also very low. I said, yeah, you see, so compensates a little bit. So that's true.
Yeah. On that note, then, because there was some very optimistic words in the report. What's your feelings? You said that this would be maybe a year where the owners of the company would see a upswing, maybe, or some optimism around what potential things could on maybe outside of Totems, or what's your feelings around that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the focus for this year, these two things hang together. There are two things. One is the funding of the company in order that we have a runway, and the second is the partnering activity. To do one, to do the second one, we need to be able to do the first one. So the focus is on finding a partner for licensing for GT002. Once that the Totem is starting and going on with the hands-on activity now in Denmark and shifting from us driving it to Denmark doing it. And I will comment a little bit on the site activation of what is really happening since the compound was delivered to Denmark in January. But the key thing, sorry, Markus, just to finish. The key thing is to find a licensing partner in this year.
Thanks for sharing that, Michael. Then coming into the burn rate and so on, it feels like you have the runaway then for maybe preliminary results and so on over there. What's the status right now on Totems?
In Totems, exactly. So the Totems, as I mentioned earlier, changed from us driving this with the clinical trial material. The material has arrived in Denmark in the middle of January. And so what they're doing now, I think I also wrote about in the CEO word, is the thing called site activation, which is basically getting everything ready. And although it sounds, very straightforward, well, now you have the material, why you don't get started? I've just, checked exactly what is the complete checklist that you have to do from the moment that you actually receive the material to you can actually start an EEG. And I have a piece of paper here. I printed it out before this meeting, and I just highlighted the key things of the steps that you have to actually do from a purely logistical point of view. So I can just give you some good clinical procedure certificates, complete protocol-specific training of the nurses in the pharmacy, what is the routine to taking blood samples, who is in charge, run through of patient visits. So we actually do a dry run, what really happens when the patient come. You have to get the documentation and training for what happens if there is an adverse event. screening visit schedules, and so on and so on. And all this is being done and trained and mock exercised in Denmark as we speak. This can take, everything between 2 weeks, longer, whatever. And probably, I presume it will take longer, but it's just a procedure that has to be done. I cannot really accelerate it. And it is organized in such a way. The material arrives at the pharmacy at the hospital in Denmark, in Glostrup, and it's that pharmacy that then dispenses the material out to the clinicians that conduct the trial. And this trial is blinded, so you have to have a routine, which part of the personnel is part of the blinding process, which part of the personnel is not involved in the blinding process. So it's all very clinical procedures, and I'm a preclinical person myself. They are necessary. This is a good clinical practice protocol trial. So, there's no way of shortcutting anything off this long list of things that you have to do. And that is what is going on right now.
And I think, isn't it worth mentioning also, you're not in charge of the study now. So your part with the communication up to this front has been because it's been in your hands. So you've been, delegating and trying to...
Exactly. So this is organized in such a way, you have a big clinical team in Denmark, which is taking over now. I am still, and Gabater is still part of the styrelses, of the board of the Totems committee. I am the chairman of the board, together with all the researchers in Denmark and the professor that built this whole Totems trial. But the hands-on, that means to take in the patients, informed consent, all the practical procedures that happen in the hospital. So all I do is gather the information and have the joint meetings with them in Denmark. And for all the ups and downs that we've had up to today, Danish Innovation Fund, which funds this whole study, and the clinical side, they're all very eager and positive to continue the trial.
I think you and me are quite eager as well.
Yeah, and so these are these are procedures that have to be followed, and sometimes you really you have to bite your teeth together because you think it's sort of unnecessary. But I get it. There's a procedure and has to be followed, and I cannot. Again, I am not the medical doctor in charge who's responsible for this application of the drug.
Well, let's maybe mention that as well, that you don't have the insights on a daily activity. So maybe, if you would get the question, I could just think of it like the audience now. It's a bit out of the hands. You're still in the loop within the steering committee. But then there's going to be a cadence, not an everyday update routine because you're not hands-on. That's my guess, right?
No, I'll go down there, of course, but I will only be able to refer to you or to the people that listen to GIST as, okay, so what did you hear from Denmark? And then I will be able to say, well, we had this and this result with this EEG, or we have this and this issue with this and this patients, or there's a this event or that event. But I cannot, neither control the timing of it, nor can I control when I get the information out, other than I'm as close as possible from an organization point of view with this project. But of course, also, and as an add-on answer to your question, now that this trial is then going in Denmark and a little bit out of my hands, we're of course looking at what more can we do with GT002, and we've had other ideas, other studies that we can potentially do, that we can drive again to the same level, clinical trials now with GT002, that we can drive to in other studies. So that's what I'm actually working on right now. And that is, I think, if I may do it sort of peak preview, that is what I would like to do, GIST number 10 topic, as soon as I got more sort of solid ground under my feet. But I think it will be interesting for everybody that's been with Gabater and everybody that listens to GIST.
Let's then pivot then from the report, and because in the point of view, you're trying to realize and kind of sell the company right now. So what's the latest when it comes to business development? Have you been out presenting anything lately?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So what we're trying to do, I attended a rather smaller but very sort of economic biotech partnering meeting, digital one, on a digital platform. And I noticed that, these meetings, they used to be face-to-face and big conference and big convention centers and so on. Now they're going more and more into digital meetings, which if they're well organized, and this one was. So it was called Biotech Gate. It's a yearly meeting, twice yearly meeting people. We both meet investors and many CEOs. And it's good to meet the CEOs because you get a good idea on, in our case, for example, what other studies can you do, where using EEG and fMRI. Other than that, we've done now, there are a lot of interesting technology advancement there that interesting Eastern connection, but there are also a number of people that work with partnering and business development, and I've tested the waters there, and the interesting feedback that I can share. I mean, I can't give names and so on. I think there are two positives. One is that the interest in the Totems trial and the focus on that the Totems trial is funded, which is actually quite unique when you go and ask for that. So that your trial is
Phase
actually
2.
funded. Did I understand you correctly that your trial? Yeah, it is actually. Oh, that's really great. And then of course, then the next question is, okay, when can we see data? That's number one. And number two is also there is quite a lot of interest, and that's I'm by default sort of positive, but in GT002 in other indications than schizophrenia. And so we're definitely looking at where can we move on. And there I can give you the feedback that the absolute biggest interest is in cognition, which is still our flagship, cognition and schizophrenia. But, the question that comes to say how it was, the question is, oh, okay, so you're looking at cognition, schizophrenia, that's very interesting, challenging and so on. But of course, about cognition in other indications. And then you very quickly come into what about dementia, and then next step is Alzheimer's. So that was the main feedback. And I said, okay, this is work in progress. We had a protocol for frontotemporal dementia trial. There are other indications that are also interesting. And we have to be, again, very pragmatic. If we have a different range of indications that could be looking at, which one is the one where you can get most straightforward, in the most straightforward way, to clinical data, be it patients, be it healthy volunteers, where you have a readout that is based on our EEG result from our previous trial. So we make use of that data. So I think that is the most interesting feedback from this biotech gate, I think. And as I said, GIS-10, I'm definitely working on the next step once we put onto our Totems trial onto, if not autopilot, at least semi-autopilot, and then we can look at our next trial. And
this conventional online. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and so it's trivial things. For example, I'm giving an example of what I talk about at this meeting. I met a CRO that works with regulatory affairs. So then the interaction I have with them, I said, okay, you have a lot of clinical trial material that you're using for the Totems trial. What are the regulatory rules and regulations to use? Can I actually use the material that I have applied in this trial? If I don't use it, can I use that material for another trial? How do I have to validate it? This is the kind of stuff that you can discuss in these meetings, and you get an interesting with experts and CROs that can help you with that kind of stuff, preparing for the next trials.
How many is like over a day, or how many days would you attend such a?
Well, it works a day. You have a big list of people, and then you can request a meeting, and then you can book your time when you are free. So I divided this in like 5 meetings, half an hour, 45 minutes per day. And Monday to Friday. It's not too bad, but to listen to these people, what they have to say, just experience. For example, okay, we don't need, for example, this particular people reviewing EEG data right now, but then interesting to hear what is your experience with EEG data? What have you done before with other companies? How far did you get? And so on. So, it's not always purely, okay, now you've signed a contract with a CRO or an investment company. It's also a lot of information that you get, and keeping it inside the field, and keeping basically many things. It's just keeping Gabathe on the radar of these people,
Is there sometimes when you have these presentations, just from personal reflections, has there been any question that stood out, something that surprised you, or in any way that was interesting or caught you off guard?
Well, nobody caught me off guard, but I can share, maybe a little bit anecdotal. Sometimes I run into people and then they ask me, Gabathe, so you're still around? because this is a small companies kind of meetings, and small companies, many come, many disappear again. So I'm always surprised, that, okay, the stamina and the standing power of Gabather is quite remarkable that, yeah, exactly. So okay. So I thought, okay, fine. I mean, that alone already is a little bit of an achievement, But as regarding, really, really unexpected questions, not really, there's sometimes people that, come and say, where with the best of will and with the best of intentions, this is not relevant for Gabather at all, and I cannot make any connections, So, but okay, many people that work, say, metabolic disorders, diabetes, but that Gabather works with CNS disorder. This says in our tagline. Yeah, but don't you think that GT002 could you, and so on, because we have a clinical trial facilities that can, I don't know, metabolic studies or, oncology, things like that. I said, oh, no, sorry. Oh, but it's nothing sort of unexpected or any question that sort of are in any way shaking the foundations of Gabather. It's very many times that just people curious to where we are, want to sell your stuff, but there are also some people that definitively put Gabather on the radar. And again, as I said before, many times the people saying that that schizophrenia and cognitive impairment and schizophrenia because of the Totems trial, which is sort of the feedback is, okay, seems to be a very good study. They've also seen the paper, but very challenging. And I can only agree. Yeah, sure, we know that.
Yeah,
definitely.
Last question: when's the next business development session? It's gonna be in is it a month or something, or?
I think the next one is at the end of March in Lisbon. Now they are, as I mentioned, they are thinking about virtual interactions, via Teams and so on. At that kind of meetings saves a lot of time and resources. I haven't investigated properly. And then there is of course, bio meetings in the States, and there is an interesting meeting, which I just got informed by Sweden Bio and biotech meeting in Switzerland. But that I think is in May, in beginning of May.
Cool, and it feels like you have plenty to do. And then if you have any gaps in your schedule, I'll come and haunt you, and we'll record some gists.
Yeah, exactly. GIST 10, Markus, if I can already preempt your
Yes,
question.
of course.
Yeah, as I said at the beginning, we want to keep up the cadence, right? So if we go for GIST 10 in 2 weeks or something like that, end of
Let's plan and see what we
next
can
week,
fit into the schedule.
But then there will be a more, I'll send you some slides and we'll make a proper little bit of a presentation rather than just, information meeting like this one.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening today, everyone. I hope this was interesting. I hope so. We try to keep it short, comments on the report and then the current business activities. Okay.
Yeah, and last work for me is actually thank you, Markus, for not only starting GIST, managing GIST, but also that you're running them and really enthusiastic. And I can only tell you, from my perspective, I only have got positive feedback from people that get in touch with me, and they actually do like the GIST updates and say, hey, Owen, when are you going to do the next GIST? And then I always say, well, ask Markus, he's the master of ceremonies here. But
I can only say the same. The only negative feedback I've had is that they should come out more often. That's well, I think that's a good sign, right?
That's a comment we can live with, Markus. Definitely.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone. Then see you in the next one.
Bye-bye.